Two transgender women of color were killed over the weekend. One woman, Malaysia Booker, was found shot to death on the streets of Dallas. The police are now investigating whether her death could be linked to another murder and assault against two other transgender women in that area. The latest numbers from the FBI show an increase in the number of reported hate crimes against members of the LGBTQ community. As part of NBC's Kids Under Pressure series, Kate Engelhart digs into the fight to ban a practice that's been affecting LGBTQ teens for decades.
Beginning in the early 1900s, psychologists started promoting the false idea that sexual orientation was changeable and that people could get rid of their homosexuality or gender identity through what's come to be known as conversion therapy. Conversion therapy involves some pretty brutal stuff. Some therapists use electric shocks or showed their patients same-sex porn and then gave them medication to make them violently nauseous. The therapy has since been completely discredited by the U.S. Surgeon General, by the American Psychological Association, and others. But here's something surprising. Conversion therapy still happens across the country and all the time. Often it's something that parents seek out for their LGBT kids. States have started banning conversion therapy on minors, and earlier this year, Utah debated a bill as part of an attempt to address the state's high youth suicide rate. The bill failed, but the campaign caught my attention because it looked a little different from campaigns in other states. Namely, it was led by Republicans and members of Utah's LDS, otherwise known as Mormon, church. First, I'm wondering, as a Republican legislator, as a member of the LDS church, why did you feel compelled to sponsor this bill?
Well, this is something that I have thought of over the last couple of years. We do know that conversion therapy is just not effective. Not only is it not effective, but it's particularly harmful. So this is not a partisan issue. This should be a bipartisan issue that gets support from both Republicans and Democrats. Ultimately, the bill did not pass. What happened? In the committee process, there were some amendments that were introduced, and I did not like the amendments and didn't feel that it would be a bill that would be helpful to the LGBTQ youth throughout the state. But, that's just part of the legislative process. At the same time, I do recall that the LDS Church, of which you're a member, has the attitude that intimate homosexual relationships are immoral and shouldn't take place, that gay people should remain celibate. Don't you worry that the continuing attitude within the church could have impact on the mental health of LGBTQ youth? Well, let me make real clear that, and I'm not a spokesman for the LDS Church. I don't speak for the LDS Church, but the church has been very clear that they do not support conversion therapy. A spokesperson for the LDS Church told NBC that it took a position of no position on the bill. He said the church opposes abusive therapy practices, but thinks the idea of what constitutes an abusive practice isn't really clear. One thing that is clear, the LDS Church believes that marriage should only be between a man and a woman, and that while same-sex attraction is not itself a sin, acting on the attraction is. Those attitudes are what drive a lot of LGBT teens to therapy. Could you just paint a quick picture for us about where you grew up and the kind of community you grew up in?
So yeah, I grew up in Lehi, Utah, very conservative, very religious Mormon place.
And who was the first person to tell you about the possibility of conversion therapy to change your sexual identification?
Yeah, I mean, with that, it wasn't something we were looking for at all. It just happened that was who I was put with. So when I first went in, the therapist kind of asked me what my goals were and why I wanted to go to therapy. And I said I've been experiencing depression, anxiety, and I'm also gay. And to that, he responded along the lines of, "Oh, that's something we can fix."
What did therapy involve for you?
So there's a lot of aversion techniques. So it's dress more masculine, speak with a more masculine voice, don't use hand gestures while you talk. So I went into this therapy with the belief oh, I'm broken, I'm not normal. I need to fix myself. And then you have this licensed professional that like comes and they validate all of this shame. And then for me, another aversion technique that was used was I was told to use a rubber band and I'd put it on my wrist.
Wow.
And I would snap it every time I had like a homosexual thought. And like sometimes to the point where like I would break skin by the end of the day. I had a little scar here. I covered it with this. It's an aloe vera plant, just kind of symbolic of like healing, moving past these things and working through them.
Tell me how you felt at the end of this therapy process.
So about 3 months into the therapy, I did attempt suicide. I realized like this isn't working. And I thought it was something I was doing. I was like, I'm doing everything I can and I just can't change. Like I'm just broken. Like been reading my scriptures. I've been praying. I've been exercising. I joined like the cross country team. And I was like, I'm not getting better. Well, better. And so it really drove like my depression and suicidal ideation even stronger to the point where like I did attempt. And like obviously I'm so thankful that didn't work. I do genuinely love being gay. I love myself now, and I'm so grateful that I've been able to get the help that I've needed to get to that point. But I mean, I've only been out like 4 years, and 6 friends and acquaintances have passed away from suicide since I've been out. And that's just people that I know of.
Even though the bill failed in Utah this year, stories like these are motivating Representative Hall and Utah's LGBT activists to try again in the next legislative session. And they're optimistic it will pass. This would put them in the company of 15 states, plus DC, where conversion therapy on minors is already illegal. What would a ban on conversion therapy mean for you personally?
For me, it means there are going to be less people that have to say, I have a friend that passed away from suicide, or I have a brother that passed away from suicide. There's going to be less people that have to speak about having this experience that I have that will affect me for the rest of my life.